You see, so many of us, we believe in God, but we don't believe God. God says, I got you. Jesus said, no one can snatch you out of my hands. No one, because the Father has placed you in my hands. God's got this, and he's got you. We don't just need to believe in God, we need to believe God. Jesus says this in John 10:30 and 39. He says, the Father and I are one. Once again, the people picked up stones to kill him. Man, oftentimes, that's our response to the truth. Have you ever had a friend or a family member speak truth to you and it's not what you wanted to hear? Your first response is an offense. Your first response is to retaliate. Your first response is to strike back. Your first response is to lash out. Jesus says the Father and I are one. You know what he's saying? He's saying, I'm God. You want to know who the Messiah is? He said he's standing right in front of you. Jesus said, at my Father's direction, I have done many good works. For which one are you going to stone me? Here it is, Hanukkah. They're at the temple, rededicating the temple, proclaiming it ready for the coming of God, for the coming of the Messiah. And God himself is standing in the temple. And what is their response? We're going to kill you. They replied, we're not stoning you for any good work, but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God. If you ever want to make a mistake, debate scripture with Jesus. Jesus replied, it is written in your own scriptures that God said to certain leaders of the people, I say you are gods. And now you know that the scriptures cannot be altered. So if those people who received God's message were called gods, why do you call it blasphemy when I say I am the Son of God? After all, the Father set me apart and sent me into the world. I just want to stop there. Isn't that amazing that the scripture calls people of God gods? You know what that means? You have no idea who you are, and many of you have no idea who Jesus is. You are God's child, God's son, God's daughter. You're a child of God. And Jesus says, if the scriptures call you guys gods, why can't I call myself God when I am God? But they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to say to that. And so Jesus says, don't believe me unless I carry out my Father's work. Let me stop here. And I don't know if this is prophetic or if this is just for one person, but I know so many of you have been hurt by somebody who said one thing and did another this year. Stop looking at what people say and start watching what they do. You want 2021 to be better than 2020? When somebody shows you who they are, listen to me. Believe them. Believe them. Many of us, we overestimate people's goodness and we underestimate their evil. He says, don't believe me unless I carry out my Father's work. Jesus says, look at my life. Look at my life. Jesus was an open book. Everywhere he went with someone. He was always out in the public. He was always with the people. He didn't live in a mansion. He lived in the hills. He didn't own a home. He borrowed rooms. That's who Jesus was. He says, look at me. Don't believe me unless I carry out my Father's work. Jesus is saying, you see the work of God that I do. He says, but if I do his work, listen to this, believe in the evidence of the miraculous works I have done. Even if you don't believe me. Even if you don't believe me. He says, look at what's happening. The hungry are fed, the blind see, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is being preached, and the light is coming in the midst of darkness. And then he says this, then you will know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. You see, Jesus is saying, you can have all the light of Hanukkah, but if you miss me, you're still in darkness regardless of the number of candles you light. So many of us, we decorate our Christmas trees. We add lights and decorations. We put up lights on our house. We put lights on our shrubbery and on our plants around our house. And none of that's any good at Christmas unless you have the light of Christ inside you. And what's their response to this? Once again, they tried to arrest him. And I want you to look at this and pray about this. But he got away. And he left them. Some Jews will celebrate Hanukkah and they'll let the Messiah get away. But do you know, many of you who call yourself Christians, you will celebrate Christmas, but you'll let Jesus get away. You'll let him get away. Jesus Christ came to bring light into your dark life and into your dark world.